Today will be part 23 to the series Scriptures Often Ignored. And today we're going to be talking about some of the least commandments that are talked about in Scripture. And today we're going to be going over some of the least commandments that are talked about. Because I've talked about many of the commandments and many of the law, statutes, and commandments with you in some of my videos, such as the importance of the feast days like Passover, unleavened bread, first fruits, Pentecost, trumpets, atonement, and of course tabernacles. We also went over the importance of the Shabbat, or the Sabbath, or the seventh day of rest, and we've also talked about clean and unclean foods, and we will be reiterating that today. But I know many of you are probably wondering, well, isn't the law done away with? Wasn't the law nailed to the cross even though the real Messiah was actually hung on a tree? Well, let's see what the real Messiah Yahushua says himself about the law, because we're here in Matthew, or Matthew chapter 5, and we're going to be reading from verses 17 through 20. And he says, according to the Messiah himself, "Think not that I am come to destroy the law or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill. For verily I say unto you, till heaven and earth pass, one jot or one tittle shall in no wise pass from the law, till all be fulfilled." Well, heaven and earth have not passed, so therefore the law is still in effect. And he even says, Yahushua says, that he did not come to destroy, but rather to fulfill. Whosoever therefore shall break one of these least commandments and shall teach men so, he shall be called the least in the kingdom of Shamayim, or heaven. But whosoever shall do and teach them, the same shall be called great in the kingdom of Shamayim, or heaven. For I say unto you, that except your righteousness shall exceed the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees, or those who follow traditions and made up laws like these holidays, ye shall in no case enter into the kingdom of Shamayim, or the kingdom of heaven. Because there are so many commandments to go over, Yahuwah willing, this is going to be turned into a series so I can go over more with you some of the commandments and some of the so-called least commandments, as well as go over many of the negative commandments, the thou shalt nots, with you as well. But today we're going to be going over just a few of them so you can get a better idea of some of the commandments and some of the least commandments that are spoken of in Scripture. So we're here in the Torah itself. We're here in Bamidbar, or Numbers chapter 15, and we're going to be reading verses 38 through 40 to see what one of the least commandments talks about. And as you can see, it says, "Speak unto the children of Yashraal, or Israel," and this is Yahuwah speaking unto Musha, or Moses, "and bid them that they make them fringes in the borders of their garments throughout their generations, and that they put upon the fringe of the borders a ribbon of blue. And it shall be unto you for a fringe, that ye may look upon it and remember all of the commandments of Yahuwah, and do them, and that ye seek not after your own heart and your own eyes, after which ye used to go a whoring, that ye may remember and do all my commandments, and be set apart unto your Allahim, or Elohim." And this is what we're talking about. So another least commandment is what? The fringes, and wearing the fringes and the ribbon of blue. In case you don't know what that's talking about, I just want to show you an example of that with traditional Hebrew garments that you see. And what you see is that they have the ribbon of blue right here, and these are the fringes that it's talking about at the bottom of it, because this is in fact the commandment for the children of Yashraal, or the real biblical Israelites. Now, as you can see, this is a better idea of how it looks. Now I'm going to zoom in so you can see it a little better. As you can see, here's the ribbon of blue that it talks about, and here are all the fringes that it's talking about as well. And as you can see, I'm going to go over a little bit more so that you can get a better idea of just how it looks. Because as you will see, even the ancient Israelites who are depicted on papyruses and ancient carvings and everything, even they wore fringes too, because here's an ancient carving, and as you can see, here are the fringes that they wore right there. So you see that it was actually ancient traditional Hebrew wares, and that this is actually a custom and a culture of the original Hebrew Israelites as well. Now here's a picture showing you the tassels, and as you can see, this is how the tassels look up close. And of course you wear this to remind you of the law, statutes, and commandments, and all the righteous law, statutes, and commandments of our Father Yahuwah that are spoken of in the Mosaic Law. Now you can make these on your own if you would like to, if you can find videos on that, but also I'll try to find some links and resources too so that you can buy them and find helpful links and resources, and also Hebrew businesses that do sell these tassels. Yahuwah willing, I'll try to find them and link them below so that you too can be wearing fringes and tassels and following the least commandments that is talked about in Scripture. Now, I would also like to reiterate with you the dietary laws that are spoken of in Vayikra or Leviticus chapter 11, as well as Dabarim or Deuteronomy chapter 14, because as you will see, there are certain foods that our Father commands us that we are to eat and that we are not to eat. And I've done a video on this earlier ago, but I would like to reiterate this for some of you who are new, because it says in verses 3 and 4 that whatsoever parteth the hoof and is cloven-footed and cheweth the cud among the beasts, that shall ye eat. So we are to eat beasts that part the hoof, are cloven-footed, and chews the cud. However, nevertheless, these shall ye not eat of them that chew the cud, or of them that divide the hoof, as the camel, because he cheweth the cud, but divideth not the hoof, he is unclean unto you. So if an animal does not do all three of these things, or beast does not do all three of these things, that animal is unclean. And the coney, because he cheweth the cud, but divideth not the hoof, he is unclean unto you. And the hare, because he cheweth the cud, but divideth not the hoof, he is unclean unto you. And the swine, though he divide the hoof and be cloven-footed, yet he cheweth not the cud, he is unclean unto you. Yes, pig and pork is unclean foods. We are instructed and commanded not to eat pork. Yes, that is a commandment. And for those of you who still want to eat it and think that the law is not done away with, I highly suggest you read Isaiah or Yeshayahu chapter 66 so you can see the punishment that's going to come for those who are caught eating swine's flesh. And that's all I'm going to say about that. But that talks about some of the carcasses of the beast, and it also talks about the fish of the sea, and those that do not have fins or scales are unclean, an abomination unto us, such as the shellfish, like shrimp and crab and lobster and foods like that. And we're going to go over more of that later on as well. And it talks about that also. And then verse 13 talks about all the unclean fowls that are abominations, much of the fowls that are, of course, hunting ravenous creatures like the ravens and the eagles and the owls. Those are unclean as well. And then, of course, it gets into some of the unclean flying, creeping things as well. Because our Father is putting a difference between the clean and the unclean, and the righteous and the unrighteous, and the set apart from the unset apart. He's separating the wheats from the tares, and we see that going on. And we see that as an example with the clean and the unclean foods in Leviticus chapter 11, verses 47 as well. Here are some of the unclean foods according to scripture itself. So as you can see, according to Leviticus 11 and Deuteronomy 14, here's some more unclean food. So as you can see, pork, bacon, and ham, that's unclean. Rabbits, hares, and rodents is also unclean. Web-footed birds, except the turkey, duck, and geese, those are unclean. And we see birds of prey are unclean, such as the raven and the hawk. And fish without both fins and scales. In order for a fish to be clean, they have to have fins and scales, such as salmon. But fish that don't have it, such as the lobster and the crab and shark, well, they are unclean. And even eels, snails, and all creeping things that crawl, fly, or swim, they too are unclean, such as frogs, and the list goes on and on. And if you would like a more detailed list of these foods, and if you're looking for a detailed list, please watch my video, Clean and Unclean Foods, below, so that you can get a better list and idea of the foods that are clean and unclean. Now, Dabarim or Deuteronomy chapter 14 also talks about all the abominable foods that is mentioned, and it talks about some of the things we've already went over about beasts that part the hoof and are cloven-footed and cheweth the cud, as those being the clean beasts, and any foods that don't do that, well, then they are unclean unto you, as you can see right here. And I highly recommend you read this on your own time. But I also want to go over how Yahuwah tells us, even in the first verse of Dabarim 14, that we are not to cut ourselves, and we are not to make any cuttings in our flesh, because we are set apart unto him, at least those of us who are of righteousness and the real biblical Israelites who are so-called black people. And that is something that I want us to all understand and see the least commandments and see how important these commandments really are, especially when it comes to scripture itself. Now I'm here in Leviticus or Vayikra chapter 19, and we're going to be reading from verses 26 through 28 that talks more about this. And as you see, it says, "Ye shall not eat anything with the blood, neither shall ye use enchantments or observe times." And it also says, "Ye shall not round the corners of your heads, neither shalt thou mar the corners of thy beard." And in the Hebrew custom and culture, it is a custom for the man and the Hebrew male to have a beard. Now let's keep going in verses 28. It says, "Ye shall not make any cuttings in your flesh for the dead, nor print any marks upon you. I am Yahuwah." And yes, that's also talking about tattoos. So that is another least commandment. No tattoos and no vaccinations, no vaccines We are not to make any cuttings in our flesh for the dead, nor partake in any other pagan rituals that do such things, or even partake of what the world is doing, such as the tattoos. And that is exactly what that's talking about, where it says no cuttings to be in our flesh. Now, another least commandment that I would like to go over with you is found here in Devarim, or Deuteronomy chapter 22, and it's in verse 5, where it says, "The woman shall not wear that which pertaineth unto a man, neither shall a man put on a woman's garment, for all that do so are abomination unto Yahuwah thy Elohim." So when a man wears a woman's clothes, or when women wear men's clothing, that is an abomination according to scripture itself. It is not to be done. And of course, there are many more commandments to go over and to talk about, like how we are to treat our neighbors in charity, and how we are to be charitable and help those, especially helping the stranger and the poor and the fatherless and the widow, as well as helping those when items are missing and when items are stolen, how we are to return the item to the lost owner and things like that and things of that nature. Yahuwah willing, I will be definitely doing more of this and going more of this in my other Scriptures Often Ignored series. If you would like me to talk more about this, and if you would like me to continue this, as well as go over some of the commandments that have to do with thou shalt not, such as fornication, adultery, idolatry, commandments such as that, please let me know in the description box below so that we can go over it together. And if you're looking for some helpful scriptures, then I highly recommend the Sefer. And what's good about the Sefer is that not only does it restore the set-apart, restored Hebrew names for our Father Yahuwah and his true son Yahusha, as well as the Hebrew names for the prophets and the disciples, as well as Hebrew locations and biblical locations in the Hebrew, but not only does it do that, it also is a comprehensive text that not only sets forth a transliteration, but also restores the Aleph Tav 9,837 times. It gets you equipped with the Hebrew, as well as a Hebrew to English chart, as well as helpful maps, and even books that are not included in the KJV today, such as Enoch, Jubilees, and other books as well. Now, I know it can be on the pricey side, but if you put in and type in the coupon code Truth Unveiled, so if you type in the coupon code Truth Unveiled on your purchase, and I'll leave the information in the description box below, you will get 10% off your purchase. And again, that coupon code is Truth Unveiled, no 777. And like I said, I will leave all of the helpful information in the description box below, readily available at your fingertips. And if you're looking for some good music and some more music and motivation for your spiritual journey, I highly recommend Hadara Batya SetApartHeart.com. Now, what's good about this website is you can follow along with her blog and get some very helpful motivation and scripture motivation as well. You can also get Yahuwah music if you're looking for some good music to listen to as you continue to journey into truth, as well as some really helpful resources that can help you on your spiritual walk and your spiritual journey. I highly recommend it, and I highly recommend you check it out. Hopefully this has helped you. This is Truth Unveiled here. Shalom.